Okay, and welcome back. I would like to introduce Susanne Schéele. Susanne has 20 years of experience within preclinical research from the pharmaceutical industry, as well as academic research institutions such as Uppsala and Lund universities. And she finished her PhD within the field of developmental cell biology in 2005 at Lund University. And Susanne is presently working as project manager at Follicum. Welcome to you, Susanne. You should just need to.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So I'll turn on the presentation now. Yes. So I will talk a little bit about my career in life science and how I went from academia to big pharma and then to a small biotech company. And you will see in my presentation that this was not maybe an obvious choice from the beginning. And as Jan said in his presentation, that I never had a real goal of becoming something. It has more been coincidence and choices that I've made along the road. So I'm going to talk about a little bit of my background and who I am. And then, as I said, these transitions that I made, the difference in working in academia versus big pharma, but also big pharma versus small biotech. I'll say a couple of words about working at Follicum and how that works. And at the end of the presentation, I will talk a little bit about work-life balance as well. So who am I? I live in the countryside between Lund and Malmö in south of Sweden, and this image here is actually my backyard in the summer. So I make this to a laser pointer here. I live in an old farmhouse from the 19th century. I have 3 children, and actually I do have a daughter with brown hair, one son with red hair, and one son with blonde hair. So this is a pretty fitting image here. And they're aged between 17 and 8. In my spare time, I love to be out in nature, and this is from the largest waterfall around here where I went a couple of weeks ago. And I do practice Qigong and Tai Chi in my spare time. It keeps me calm and energized. So if I'm going to say something about my core scientific interests, I mean, I've always been really interested in seeing the bigger pictures and the details in the bigger pictures and bring them together. And as such, working with diabetes is like perfect because it's like a whole body metabolic disease that affects a large number of organs and has a very cell biology basis. So you can really spend time about thinking about pieces and how to put them together. And I like to search for the non-obvious in science. My background is, as Jette said, that I have a PhD in cell biology, and I am working as a project manager, and I'm a senior scientist. So a little bit about my educational background. I love to study, and I have been studying a lot at different places. As you can see, we don't need to go into detail here. And as I was a student, and especially when I was doing my PhD, I thought I would never, ever leave academia. I loved it. The whole environment, to learn things, to talk to people in different areas and so on. So what happened? And why did I do this transition? Well, after my PhD, I was working at Lund University, and I was doing postdoctoral studies at a number of different departments, maybe 3 different departments. And the basis that I did was embryonic stem cells, and I in different settings. So mouse embryonic stem cells and human embryonic stem cells I worked with. And then how then did I make the transition into working with peptide pharmaceuticals for the treatment of diabetes? So that's, well, I guess what I thought was that I would work in academia and have an academic career. But then after a while, it was quite hard to get funding. And although I was never out of work, I felt that all the ideas that I had, some of them were very good actually, I must say, but it was difficult to even though you ended up in a lab with a professor that believed in you, if you didn't get funding, it was difficult. And after I got my second child, my husband at the time, he was also in academia, and it was like an economical question, I guess. I thought, okay, now I'm going to see if I can work in the industry. But when you have if your background is embryonic stem cells, not many industrial places or pharmaceutical companies were working with that. Not at the time, at least. So I started to look around, and I only looked in Sweden to begin with. And I applied for a couple of positions, but then I got a tips from my sister who works in Copenhagen. She said, you should go work for Novo Nordisk. They work with diabetes. And I had worked with, developmental biology. I had worked with cancer treatment. I had worked with cardiac disease, but I had no experience whatsoever in diabetes. So I said, well, I don't think I have much of a chance. And she said, well, yeah, I've seen this position. You should look at it. And I looked at it. And actually, when I went into the details of this position, I could see that a lot of things I had actually done. So they wanted somebody with confocal experience. Well, I had been the manager for a core facility of confocal microscopy at Lund University when I was a PhD student. So that I knew pretty well. And they wanted somebody who had worked with cellular uptake. And actually at the oncology department, I did a couple of experiments in the uptake with HIV TAT and also with dextrans. So, okay, I could meet that. And then there was a couple of different other details. So I made sure that I answered all the things in the application, and I was very thorough when I wrote it. And then I sent it in, and I didn't think about it because I was sure I wouldn't get it. And then actually I was called for an interview. And at that time I had been on maternity leave for over a year. And, you know, talking to a small child is great, but you don't get a lot of response really if you try to talk science. So I was just so happy to be there. I had to present my scientific background, and I made a presentation. I was like, oh my God, grown-up people are going to listen to me now, and they're going to ask questions about something that I know. So when I went in this room, there was a panel of 6 scientists that were listening to my presentation. I was just so happy to be there. And actually, I got the position, and that was great. And I worked at Novo Nordisk for 7 years, and then they had a large round of firing people, and I was one of the ones that were fired. And that was also pretty good, actually, because they gave me a garden leave, paid garden leave of 7 months, which was very generous. And then I could switch to working with something completely different, but yet the same, which is what I'm doing now at Follicum. So that's how I moved from academia to the industry. So the fundamental learnings from academia that really helped me in industry, I mean, first of all, cell biology, which is the core of what I know. And I mean, every little thing that I learned is in the back of my head, and something that I can rely on is there. And also, for the sake of the application, as I described, remembering all the things that you do and be able to kind of use it or communicate it will help you in the long run. The laboratory skills, when I'm in academia, of course, I did a lot of laboratory work, but being hired as a scientist in Novo Nordisk meant that I had technicians doing the laboratory work. But my own experience with this was of great help, because I could help them to troubleshoot in an intelligent way. The teaching, I did a lot of teaching when I was in academia. And I think teaching, as nothing else, trains you in holding different things in your brain at the same time. You need to be able to write on the blackboard at the same time as you deliver a message, at the same time as you maybe answer questions that are not exactly related to what you want to say, and so on. And always you have to know your stuff, because otherwise the students gets really cranky. And the fourth thing that I want to bring up here is solution finding. And I mean, that's something you do all the time in academia, in the pharmaceutical industry. And yeah, just don't give up. There's always a solution. So when I moved from academia to industry, I think what struck me was that in academia you are like you're alone with your project. You might not feel alone, because you maybe you have a professor that supports you, or you have a technician that helps you, but at your level of work you're alone. And as you progress and you become a PI, then you're really alone. And for good and for bad, because it's great to be able to decide yourself and do what you want, and you get the credit and so on. In industry, you're a team player, and you're very important because you're part of a team where every team member is needed. But it's always the project that is the most important. And you need to be able to communicate with others. For me, this was amazing. I thought it was really the best thing maybe with switching from academia to industry. In big pharma, you're maybe in the project where you have people from different disciplines. So when I did my cell biology research and I got the result, I could call up somebody working in physics and telling him, you know, I saw this. Could you explain this from a physics standpoint? And he would say, yeah, let's have a meeting, because we're in the same project and we both want the best for the project. So we try to see what he can bring and what I can bring. And that was just such a great thing, I thought. also when you work in academia, you make a discovery, and your main goal is then to do study this discovery to be able to publish it, and then you have your publications, and that will make it possible for you to search for funding. In industry, I mean, you make an invention. That invention has to be made into a product so that this product can be brought to the market. Certain steps in this are the same. I mean, you need to do your research and you need to do the studies. You need to find the mode of action maybe, or see how does things work? How do they fit together on a, I mean, if you're in cell biology as I am, on a cellular level. But the mindset is different, and that's something and that is good to remember. So to say something about working in big pharma versus small biotech, and this is now my experience from the positions that I've had. When I started at Novo Nordisk, I was amazed at how prepared the environment was. I immediately got 2 technicians that worked only for me, and I just told them what to do, and they did that within what we were doing. And it made it very easy to work very efficient and get things done very quickly. But what I discovered after a while was that if you want to do something that's not the speciality of your department, it becomes much more difficult. Or if you have new ideas, these ideas have to penetrate many layers of, I mean, your boss has to like it, and his boss has to like it, and his boss also has to like it. Otherwise, you can't go anywhere with ideas. In small biotech, it's completely different. You basically have to find your own lane. There's no lane. You have to find unconventional solutions, and you have to think around problems, and you have to kind of put bits and pieces together to get things done, and you have to have like the end goal in sight, and then kind of try to navigate with limited resources towards that end goal. On the other hand, small biotech is great because if you have an idea, if I have an idea, I can walk 2 offices away, and that's where Jan sits, and he will say, yeah, let's discuss it. Or and it's very easy. You don't have to penetrate many layers of people that you need to basically make a PowerPoint presentation and sell your idea to. So that's fantastic. I mean, in big pharma also you have all these benefits, holiday homes, and you have you can take a lot of like in-house courses to develop your competence. You can make a career within the company, which is not really the case in small biotech. I mean, as Jan said, we're 5 people here, so you can't really switch position within the company. You bring your competency to the company, and then you find your way to navigate towards the common goal. So it's quite different ways of working. And then I would like to say something about working in Denmark and Sweden. So from my experience, there are great benefits on both sides of the bridge. For me, the greatest thing with working in Denmark is that I now understand Danish. I'm from Stockholm originally, and even working in south of Sweden, you need to understand Danish because you have so much exchange between the countries, which is fantastic, but it's a little bit embarrassing if you're Swedish and you don't understand Danish. So I'm very, very happy about this. There's also some subtle, interesting cultural differences that I found some joy in discovering. In Denmark, you generally have a higher salary and a shorter workday, which was great. Working in Sweden, for me, living in Sweden, is that it is quite costly to commute. It's the gas and also the bridge fee. Now I have, instead of more than an hour to work, it takes me 15 minutes, which saves me a lot. So, I mean, these two things kind of make up for the slightly lower salary and the shorter workday. There's also better social security in Sweden. And another thing, when you work far from home and even in another country than where you live, it's a bit difficult to join like after work activities. So it's always like whenever there's something going on after work, it's a little bit of a problem, which is of course not the case if you work close to home. So these are my reflections on this. So about Follicum then. We try to think smart, to make the most of every study. How can we, and this is due to the limited resources, how to make every study as smart as possible and how to navigate as intelligently as possible around certain problems. I find in Follicum that there's a great support in decisions and problem solving. So if there's a big decision that is going to be made, or if there's a problem, everybody will join and discuss this, and we will come to a solution together, which is really a great comfort, and no one is left alone with a big decision, and that's great. The competency in the company is very high, and it's also very diverse. And being such a small company, this is important because everybody has to be able to do their piece and do it as well as possible. Everybody has a very innovative mindset, and that ties back into the problem solving, I think, too. And there's also a very nice and friendly atmosphere. People here are nice, and sometimes we have cake too, which is nice. So a typical day at Follicum, I would say there's no typical day at Follicum. It's highly variable. So it's usually the case that I have an idea of what I want to accomplish a certain day, and then I open my mailbox and then something else comes in. So here's also a comparison with big pharma, where my workday was much more regulated. So I would arrive early in the morning, I would talk to my technicians, go over the day, and then at 9 o'clock, there was almost always some type of meeting, and then lunch at a set time, and then an afternoon meeting, and then that was kind of the day. And then you had to manage everything in between. And whereas here, there's things coming in, and I mean, there can be a number of different things that show up along the way and that needs to be taken care of. And that's, for me, part of the great fun. And it requires, of course, some flexibility working in that way. So some words about work-life balance. And when I was asked to talk about this, I was thinking, okay, this is very difficult. Do I have anything to say about this? And then I thought, maybe I do. I'm a divorced mother of 3, so yeah, I've had my share of challenges. And when I thought about it, I like really sat down and thought about it. I think, first of all, work is like a quite large part of your life. And as Jan said in his presentation, he goes out with his dogs and then he can clear his mind, but also think about how to solve different things at work. So it's like you're never really free of work. You will think about it also during the rest of the hours of the day. But I think we have a great personal responsibility here, because no one can know what your balance is. So you have to choose wisely what goes into your pile. And some things that I've thought about that I believe are important is you need to do something that is meaningful to you. And that goes both for your work life and your outside of work life. Because then you will more, I mean, if you find meaning in what you do, then it's easier to handle things. And be mindful of what energizes you and what drains your energy. And then, I mean, during the tasks that you do during the day, what fills you with energy and what doesn't? If you know that, you can more easily navigate around those things. And you need to be kind to yourself and to others. And pat yourself on the back when you do something good, because it's you can't really expect others to do that. And there's something about doing what's meaningful to you, and this search for the instant gratification. It's not always certain that you get that from others. So when you do something that's meaningful to you, you can also be kind to yourself and say, I was happy I did that and it worked out really well. Celebrate things that work out well and be grateful for what you have, and then ask for help. I think these are, I mean, they might sound cliche, but they're true things that will help you along the way. And life is a constant change of circumstances. And if you find your balance in your everyday life, then you can more easily withstand those times when things go crazy, either at work or at home, because things do go crazy for everybody at some point. And then it's good to have that extra energy to be able to cope with that. So I think that was what I wanted to say. Thank you for listening, and questions are welcome.
Thank you for the presentation, Susanne. There is a question from Katarina. And yes. She asked, could you elaborate on social security advantages in Sweden? Is the situation for parents better in Sweden as well?
Yeah, I think the two things that I thought about. The one thing is that I know in Denmark it differs from workplace to workplace, but in Novo Nordisk it was so that if you had a child that was sick, you could only stay home for 1 day. In Sweden, you can stay home until the child is healthy again. And of course, it can be very, very stressful when your child turns sick and you have to find somebody else to take care of your child because you can't stay home. I mean, I was lucky because I had support from my husband and also from my parents, so it worked out fine. But still, it's that's the one thing. The other thing is, if you look at also for children, I got my third child while I was working at Novo Nordisk, and the maternity leave money was much, much better than in Sweden. So, but the difference is that in Sweden you can say that, okay, I will save some days for later, and then you can take them out in scattered portions whenever you want. Whereas in Denmark, at least at Novo Nordisk, I don't know if it's different at different workplaces. If you wanted to take out more parental days, you would have to do it in a 2-month chunk. And it's just very, very difficult when you're a scientific researcher to say, okay, guys, I'm going to be out for 2 months now. Even if you're allowed to do it and your boss can't even deny you, you have all these projects and all these, you have your technician, and you feel, I mean, you do feel a responsibility to make things work because it's your work and it's a big part of your life. It's easier in Sweden. You can say, okay, I need to take 2 days of maternity or parental leave. That's easier. So I found, especially when the kids were smaller, just having the possibility to take that a couple of extra days of holiday during the summer has been great, which was not possible in Denmark.
Okay, thank you. And there's a question from Jonas. He says, thank you for a great presentation, Susanne.
Thank you.
Both you and Jan were in big pharma and then switched to small biotech. And Jan also mentioned that it was maybe better to start off in big pharma. Can you elaborate on your thoughts on this? Do you think there's one more. Do you think you close the big pharma door a bit if you choose small biotech as the first industry position?
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so I will take the first question first. Well, I agree with Jan that it's probably better to start off in big pharma but then it's also what opportunities you get and what your competency is. But in big pharma, you get a lot of education. I mean, they have internal courses and they will constantly educate you, and you have these big seminar gatherings where people from different parts of the companies will come and tell you different things, and you get a very good idea about drug development in big pharma. And having that as a backpack when you come to small biotech is very, very helpful. For me, I mean, this position that I have now, I could not have managed without the experience from Novo Nordisk. And the second question, can you please repeat it?
Do you think you close?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I certainly do not think that, because I mean, every experience, I think it's actually easier to get a position in big pharma if you have worked in a small biotech than going from academia directly to big pharma. But it's also the thing that big pharma is, as the name suggests, big. There's so many different opportunities, so many different positions at different levels. So I do not think that you close any doors by going that direction. I mean, what they seek and what every company seek is competence and drive, and whatever you do will build your competence.
Okay, and Jonas say, okay, that makes sense. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
And I don't know if there are